It begins so quietly that the world doesn't even register the theft taking place. You're 7, maybe 8, standing in the dim kitchen light while a parent unravels in slow motion. Perhaps it's the tremor in their hands as they reach for the bottle again. Perhaps it's the way their voice cracks like thin ice when they shout about nothing and everything. Perhaps it's the silence that follows, heavier than any scream, when they simply stop looking at you, stop seeing you, stop being the grown-up in the room. In that moment, something older than language settles into your bones, a decision no child should ever have to make. If I don't keep this family afloat, we all drown. And just like that, childhood slips away, not with a bang, but with the soft click of a door closing inside your chest. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and for longer than I care to admit, I carried that click around like a second heartbeat. I smiled perfectly, achieved early, comforted everyone, and never once let the tears fall where anyone could see them. I was the golden girl, the responsible one, the little grown-up everyone leaned on. And for years I wore that praise like armor, until one day I realized the armor had grown into my skin and I no longer knew where the performance ended and the person began. This is the story of the children who disappeared without ever leaving home. The ones who became invisible caretakers long before they understood the word sacrifice. The ones who learned that love was something you earned by making sure nobody ever had to feel uncomfortable, especially not because of you. Today we're going inside that experience, not with judgment, but with tenderness, because the little child who learned to survive that way is still waiting for someone safe to come back for them. And if you recognize even a fragment of this story in your own life, stay with me. You're not alone, and you're not broken. You're just tired in a way most people will never understand. Let me paint the picture more clearly. Imagine little Claire, age 9, sitting on the stairs at 11 p.m., listening to her parents argue through the thin bedroom wall. She's clutching her stuffed rabbit so tightly its ear begins to tear. She's not crying. She stopped doing that out loud 2 years ago because tears made everything worse. Instead, she's counting heartbeats, timing the silences, calculating how many minutes until one of them storms out and she'll need to be ready. Ready to comfort mom when the car peels away. Ready to distract dad if he starts throwing things. Ready to make tomorrow feel normal again by morning. That is parentification in its rawest form. Child becoming the emotional shock absorber for adults who have forgotten how to regulate themselves. Or picture Nathan at 12, waking up every school morning to find his mother still asleep on the couch, television flickering, empty wine glasses like fallen soldiers on the coffee table. He tiptoes past, makes his own breakfast, packs his own lunch, forges her signature on the permission slip, and somehow still manages to get straight A's because excellence is the only language he's ever been praised in. Teachers call him such a mature young man. They have no idea maturity for Nathan is another word for terror, that if he ever slips, the whole fragile house of cards collapses. And then there's Lydia, 15 going on 40, mediating between her divorced parents every weekend because neither of them can stand to speak directly to the other. She carries messages like a diplomatic courier. She absorbs their bitterness so it doesn't poison her younger brother. She smiles when they each tell her the other one is crazy. Inside, she's screaming, but the scream has no exit. There is no safe adult to hand this burden to, so she swallows it, and it becomes part of her skeleton. These aren't extreme cases. They're heartbreakingly common, and the world rarely notices because these children look fine. Better than fine. They look gifted. Teachers love them. Relatives brag about them. Friends rely on them. They're the kids who seem to have it all together while internally they're running on fumes and prayers. What happens inside the brain of a child forced to play adult is both fascinating and devastating. The developing nervous system learns that safety is conditional, that emotions are dangerous, that the best way to stay attached to the people you need is to become indispensable to their emotional survival. So the child builds a false self, highly competent, highly attuned, highly pleasing, and parks the real self somewhere deep and quiet where it can't make trouble. Over time, the real self doesn't feel real anymore. The mask does, and that's when the trouble really begins. Fast forward 20, 30 years. That 9-year-old on the stairs is now a 40-year-old woman who can run a company, organize a charity gala, and still feel her stomach drop every time her phone rings after 9 p.m., because part of her is still waiting for the next crisis. That 12-year-old making his own lunches is now a man who hasn't taken a vacation in 8 years because rest feels like negligence. That 15-year-old mediator now apologizes when her husband has a bad day as if his mood is somehow her failure to prevent. These are not coincidences. These are the long echoes of childhood survival strategies that once kept a small heart beating but now keep an adult heart exhausted. Let me tell you about a client I worked with, a woman named Margaret. On paper, Margaret had everything. Beautiful home, successful career as a pediatric nurse, ironic, isn't it? Two lovely teenage kids, a husband who adored her. But Margaret was drowning. She hadn't slept through the night in years. She checked on everyone constantly. If her daughter coughed once, Margaret was on WebMD at 2 a.m. If her husband seemed quiet at dinner, Margaret spent the evening coaxing him to talk, then lay awake wondering what she'd done wrong. She described it like living with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake at all times. When I asked her gently who took care of her when she was little, she laughed, the brittle kind of laugh that's covering tears, and said I was the caregiver, always. My mom had depression, my dad worked 3 jobs, my little brother had asthma. Somebody had to keep it together. Margaret was 50, 2 years old, and still waiting for someone to relieve her shift. Or consider Daniel, a high-powered attorney who came to see me because he was having panic attacks before every closing argument. Daniel could dismantle opposing counsel in court without breaking a sweat, but the idea of asking his girlfriend to pick up groceries on the way home made his chest tighten. If I asked for help, he told me, they'll realize I'm not actually competent. They'll see I've been faking it my whole life. Daniel was 40 years old and still terrified that if he ever stopped performing perfection, everyone would leave. These stories break my heart every single time because Margaret and Daniel and millions like them never got to be children. They got to be crisis managers. They got to be emotional support animals wearing human faces. And society rewarded them for it so thoroughly that they never learned there was any other option. So what does this look like today in adulthood? It looks like never fully relaxing on vacation because you're managing everyone else's good time. It looks like saying, I'm fine, when what you mean is, I'm crumbling, but I don't know how to let you catch me. It looks like attracting partners who lean on you heavily because you broadcast, without words, that you can handle it, whatever. It looks like rage that comes out sideways, years of swallowed, no, exploding over something small like the wrong brand of orange juice. It looks like a constant low, great anxiety you've mistaken for personality. It looks like never feeling quite at home in your own skin because home was never safe to begin with. One of the cruelest tricks is how good we become at gaslighting ourselves. We say things like, lots of people had it worse. At least my parents didn't hit me. At least we had food on the table. At least. And all of those things may be true, and none of them erase the fact that a child was left alone with terror too big for their body. Minimizing is another survival skill. If we make it small enough, maybe it will stop hurting. Spoiler, it doesn't. Here's what I want you to understand with every cell in your body. The strength you developed wasn't the problem. The problem was that you had to develop it alone, far too soon, at the expense of everything soft and tender and playful inside you. Strength built on the graveyard of childhood is a haunted strength. It will serve you until it destroys you. So how do we begin to heal? Slowly, kindly, without the same brutal efficiency we applied to surviving. The first step is simply to bear witness, to look directly at that small child you once were and refuse to look away again, not to fix them, not yet, just to see them. I ask people to find a photograph from that time if they can, a school picture, a birthday party, whatever exists. And I ask them to look into those little eyes and tell the truth out loud. You were so alone. You were so scared. And you did the best you could with what you had. I'm so sorry no one protected you the way you deserved. I've watched grown men in my office dissolve into sobs holding a picture of their 7-year-old selves. I've watched women in their 60s finally rage at parents long dead because the child inside them needed to scream. This is not indulgence. This is oxygen after decades underwater. From there we begin the practice of reparenting ourselves. It sounds simple, almost silly, but it's profound. We give ourselves what we never got. We learn to ask, what do I need right now? And believe that the answer matters. Some days the answer is a nap. Some days it's crying in the shower. Some days it's putting boundaries around people who still treat us like the family fix-it person. Some days it's buying the ridiculous cereal we weren't allowed to have as kids just because it makes the child inside smile. I had a client named Sophie who started leaving herself little notes in her kitchen that said things like, "You don't have to earn rest today," and "It's okay if someone is momentarily upset, and it's not your job to fix it." Sophie cried the first time she read one of her own notes because no adult had ever given her permission to stop performing. Another client, James, began taking himself on what he called inner child Saturdays. He'd go to the arcade, eat cotton candy, watch cartoons, do all the things his childhood never had room for. At first he felt stupid. Then he felt lighter than he had in 40 years. Healing looks like learning to receive, like letting someone else carry the groceries sometimes, like saying, "I'm not okay," and staying in the room to find out what happens next, like celebrating your wins without immediately scanning for what still needs fixing, like realizing that being needed is not the same as being loved, and you deserve the second one even when you're falling apart. There will be setbacks. You'll catch yourself overfunctioning in a new relationship and hate yourself for it. You'll say yes when every cell is screaming no. You'll feel like you're regressing. But here's the secret: those moments are the healing in action. Every time you notice the old pattern and choose something different, even if it's 2 minutes later, even if it's messy, you're rewiring the brain that once believed survival depended on self-erasure. And one day, something shifts. You realize you're laughing without checking who might need you to stop. You realize you slept through the night without cataloging tomorrow's crisis. You realize someone can be upset in your presence and you don't disintegrate. You realize joy doesn't always feel like waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's when you know the child you buried is finally exhaling. If you're listening to this and something in you is weeping, let it. Those are the tears you never got to cry when you were small and making yourself invisible so everyone else could feel big. Let them fall now. There's room. There's time. There's finally an adult in the room who isn't going to punish you for having needs. And that adult is you. You never got the childhood you deserved, but you get to give yourself the adulthood you do. One where softness is allowed. One where rest isn't laziness. One where love isn't a transaction. One where you get to be human, gloriously, messily, tenderly human. So come home, little one. The war is over. You don't have to hold the sky up anymore. Let it go. Let yourself be small for a while. Let yourself be held. The person you've been waiting for your whole life is already here. They have your eyes. They have your hands. They have your heart. And they're never, ever leaving you behind again. This script is fully original and does not reproduce the source text word for word